Welcome to Get Your Game Tight podcast with Galen Nickerson. And today we're very fortunate and happy to have a guest, Miss Danielle Pugh. She's in the educational field. And like I say, we're very proud and happy to have her today. And she's our first guest here today. So, Ms. Pugh, first question that I would like to know about your background as being a teacher, and then you became a principal, and now you're an assistant superintendent.
Yes.
And so my question would be, which one, what is more challenging for you? What was more challenging, being a principal, or, organizing the teachers, or now as an assistant?
Well, the hardest job in any school district is a high school principal. So that was my the hardest task I had to complete, because dealing with adults is a lot more difficult than dealing with students. So as a teacher, I had to manage the behaviors in the classroom of the students, and you would understand that, they acted a certain way because of their maturity level, things they had not yet learned. But what was surprising is some of those same behaviors were displayed by adults as teachers. So that was the most difficult, because I had to realize as a leader that my area of growth was in building relationships. I had a reputation coming into my principalship because I had worked with a lot of the colleagues at the high school, because before I became principal, I was a math coach and a school improvement specialist at the high school. So I had a reputation of being no nonsense, and I was very focused and determined to get the job done. And I also was an excuse eliminator.
Right.
So teachers, even though they hold students to a certain standard, they don't hold themselves to that standard. And I was challenged to continue to hold them to a standard, at the same time continue to be fair and equitable. So what I had to realize was my teachers became like my students. I had to kind of differentiate the way I dealt with people. I couldn't deal with everyone the same way. And I had to also overcome the perception that they already had of me before I became the building leader. That was difficult, and it took me a couple of years. The most humbling experience I had was when my second year as a principal, I asked teachers at the end of the year to make appointments with me, individual appointments, to come speak with me. And I only had 2 questions. I sent them out in an email. My 2 questions was, what was one thing you think we could do to better our campus? And what's one area I could focus on to become a better leader? And when they came to me to have those meetings, I didn't speak. I just had my iPad out and I just typed what they said. I didn't try to defend anything that they said. I just typed. So that summer, what I did was I studied those questions and answers that the teachers had given me. And the next year I started implementing a different leadership style. I was more of a distributive leader. So I allowed my staff to be a part of the decision making and the work. Because before that, I was trying to do everything on my own. And it was very challenging and time consuming. But one of the staff members told me, 2 things stood out from those meetings. One staff member told me, you don't allow us to help you. So I learned how to be a distributive leader. And another staff member told me that I give 10 energies something that only needs a 2. So I took that into account also. And I was a more mellow leader, and I was more encompassing of everyone's input. And it helped, because I wouldn't have traded my high school staff for anything in the world. They were there for me. They were there for the students. They were on board for my vision for the campus, and we just made it work. And because of me changing how I dealt with the adults, We were able to move the school. It took us a while, it took us 3 years, but we moved the school from an F school to a D school. So hard task to do, and I attribute all of the accolades to the teachers and students. It was just me moving those pieces around and getting things in place.
Oh, that's awesome. Now, for a future student that's trying to be a teacher or be in that field, what would you suggest, like some of the avenues they should take, or even classes they should even take or something?
Sometimes people don't make their mind up early on about being a teacher, but sometimes they do. We have a lot of non-traditional teachers in the field now, which means they got a degree in something else. They got a banking degree, and now they decide they want to be a math teacher. And so because of the teacher shortage, districts and the State Department are making room for that, and they have pathways for them to get their licensure. I did not think I was going to be a teacher. That was not something I wanted to do. But life and just things that happen. I had a child, and so I had to make up my mind about something that I could make a better life for him. And I know factory work wasn't it either. So for anyone coming into the education field or think they might want to, I want them to think long and hard about it, first of all, because even though we have a lot of people coming into the field now, non-traditional, they think school is like it was when we were younger, playing school. It is not like that. Students are not even like they were when I first started teaching. The definition of a student has evolved, and what happens in the classroom has evolved. Students are no longer sitting in straight line rows and doing worksheets. And the State Department is not condoning that anymore. The expectation is that you are grasping the students' attention, you are keeping them engaged, you are making sure that you're teaching the standard to the grade level, not dumbing down the curriculum. So there's a lot of work involved. So my advice would be for them to make up their mind and know that this is something they want to do and that they're willing to put in the work. Because even though teachers don't get paid a lot of money, they work really hard. And I don't want them to think this is just 7:30 to 3:30 that you can put down, and or Monday through Friday job, or even an August through May job. Mm-hmm. There will be some preparation you'll have to do in the evenings. There will be some preparation you'll have to do on the weekend. There will be some things you have to do in the summer. So I want them to keep that in mind.
And from the student's perspective, are there like any programs or anything they can do extra to get like a scholarship?
Not all students are gonna go to college, and we realize that. But for those who choose to do so, making the grade is very important. Because I was a high school principal, I was able to see firsthand students get excited about coming to high school. They're so excited about coming to high school, and what they end up doing is blowing it academically their freshman year. And it's not until their junior year that they start saying to me, "Ms. Pugh, I wish I had listened to you when I was a freshman because of this," that they're behind in grades. They may not be on track for graduation. They've lost credit because they failed classes, and then they're working double time to get on track because now they made their mind up that I want to go to college. So they have to start early. It was a time when a student could just relax and be a kid, but now it's competitive. And you have to know for sure what it is you want to do, and you have to keep those grades up. Because if you don't and you fall behind, there is a point of no return where it's too late to catch up as far as when you compete with classmates for scholarships, especially local scholarships. Also, there is work to do to get a scholarship. It's not just people handing you money. There are essays you have to write, forms you have to fill out. And there are a lot of students who aren't willing to do that. The year before I became principal, The senior scholarship total was like $800 and some thousand, which seems like a lot of money. But I knew we could do more. So that was one of the things I did my first year as a principal. I pushed seniors to apply for scholarships because I told them, you never know where you want to go to school. They'll say, well, I don't want to go to school there. Well, you don't know it. I mean, if they're going to pay for your education, who would turn down a free education? So I pushed them to apply for scholarships. And that year, our scholarship total was $3.4 million. So I like quadrupled the amount of scholarships that students were bringing in because I encouraged them to apply, and I wanted them to understand that it's important to know, where this money is located, because a lot of times they didn't even know it was available. That was also the year I partnered with a guy out of Memphis, and I started doing HBCU college tours because some of these schools students didn't even know about. I know when I was a senior in high school, I didn't know anything about an HBCU. So I wanted them to be exposed to that because I tried to make sure they had every opportunity they could. Mm-hmm. And it paid off for a lot of them. It did.
Yeah, HBCU is big, and it's another avenue and a better way for kids to go. But also, I would like to say, in this area, as far as the district and stuff, how do you rate the education with the kids, like compared to other districts?
Osceola School District, there's a perception out there that we're not as good as surrounding districts. But the truth is, in a lot of cases, we're better. It is just that the negativity that's tied to our district gets publicized more. That was another thing I had to work against as a high school principal, the perception. There were people who truly believed that the kids were running rampant, hanging from the ceiling, pants sagging, gang activity happening, gambling in the back. They just really thought that was happening on a daily basis. And when they would come to visit the school, they were always surprised, and they would say to me, it's quiet. And I'm thinking, yes, we're having school. Students are in the classroom. When the tardy bell sound, the transition was swift because that was the expectation. So until they would come to see it for themselves, the perception that others have put out there, they believed. And so we have the same students. We share students sometimes. There's a lot of times we have students who withdraw from our district to go to another district, and within as soon as 2 weeks, they're back. Like, I don't even miss them. They're back so fast. So same things happening everywhere. But the negativity sometimes get publicized more for Osceola School District.
Mm-hmm. So where do you see the district in the future? What do you see for the future of Osceola?
We have a lot of things in the right place now. We're moving in the right direction. I see us as being an achieving district. One of the things that has hurt us the most, and I have witnessed it, and unfortunately, and sometimes I have been a part of it, there's the negativity from within. We destroy ourselves, but we do have a lot of programs, a lot of people in the right position, and I think that we're moving in the right direction. Our new leadership, I'm positive about our new leadership. Dr. Greg Hodges is our new superintendent, and I'm positive about the direction he's trying to take the district. I'm going to be supportive as possible to it. I have cautioned him because of things that have happened in our district before. The community is not as trusting as they were. And I told him, I said, we have to build that trust. And he says, yes, we. And I had to correct him. I said, no, you're the outsider. So I want him to understand the work that's ahead of him. But we're moving in the right direction. And I think academically, we have more students that are serious about their education. And we're moving in a positive direction.
Mm-hmm. And for kids to stay positive and want that education and want to get to the next level, what must they do around here? I mean, as far as from a teacher's perspective.
We have to champion our students. I remember when I first started teaching, I was at the middle school teaching science. And Coach Bray and Coach Stacy were the basketball coaches. And I used to keep the book for them and run the game clock. Well, those students that I was running the clock for in middle school, when they became junior high students, I would always go to their games. And sometimes I would be the only person in the stand cheering for them. So we have to champion our students. We have to be very supportive. We have to be invested and interested in what's happening with them. I talked earlier about the challenge for me was building relationships, but not with students. It came easy to me because I was invested in their lives. A lot of students, I would see myself in them. And I would encourage them every day. There were students I checked in with every day. When I was at the middle school, I started doing something because I noticed that students started paying attention to how much adults respected them. So what I started doing was I started calling all of my students by their last name, Mr. or Miss. And it made a difference. But I had one student, LaRodre Rose. He asked me one day, he said, Miss Pugh, why are you always calling me Mr. Rose? I said, well, what do you call me? He said, well, I call you Miss Pugh. I said, why? And he thought about it for a minute. He was like, because that's a sign of respect. I said, I always want you to feel respected too, so I will always call you Mr. Rose. And he just put this big smile on his face and stuck his chest out. And so that's what I did. It's always Mr. and Miss. When I introduce myself to a student, I want to know their whole name. And I made that a habit because I wanted to not only show them respect, but I wanted to model the respect. And so that helped. But you have to champion the students. You have to cheerlead for them because they don't always have somebody cheering for them. And that's just something I realized, and that's just something I'll continue to do.
Mm-hmm. That sounds real empowering. I can see myself as a kid and coming across teachers like that. It is first of all, it's memorable. You always remember them, and it's motivating. It's real motivating.
Game type, game type, GT.
Welcome back to the Get Your Game Type podcast. I'm your host, Galen Nickerson. I'm here with Miss
Toshiba Pugh, Assistant Superintendent of Osceola School District.
Yes. And right back to the meat of things. I was gonna ask you, have you had anything to do with like the implementing the education?
As far as curriculum, we normally just purchase books or we'll find what's best. Here recently, the State Department has changed its policy on things. We have to get a high quality instructional material, which we call HQIM now. So there's a list and we have to choose from that list for certain subjects. Literacy and math specifically, there are some things out there for science, but because of the whole push for the science of reading, they decided on what was appropriate for our students. So as a district, we've adopted those things. As far as policy now, I have created some policy. Let me make that clear. The school board creates the policy or adopts the policy for the district. I have created protocols that I used at the high school that later became district policy. So that's something that has happened. Because of some of the things that we were facing, and I had to deal with some discipline issues, and our handbook didn't cover it, I pulled my admin team together and we sat down and we talked about what we needed to happen or I won't say our reaction to it, but what consequences need to be in place if certain things happen. So I have written protocol that later became policy. 2 in particular that I've done that now are part of our student handbook. So I've done that.
Yeah, that's impressive and awesome. So when it comes to the students in this area, is there like a high volume of disciplinary, or is
Yes, and it stems not necessarily from student infractions, but the way adults deal with the students. You can have 2 different teachers that have the same student that does the same thing and they react to it differently. In one classroom, it may be a discipline infraction that a teacher would write up on a discipline slip and send to the office. In another teacher's classroom, it just may be something that they deal with, or they know that's the expectation from the teacher. I remember one particular incident in middle school when I was a middle school teacher. Teachers used to come to me and say, "Why don't they act like that in your classroom?" It was because of the expectation that I had. I saw a student at lunch one day. His name was Larry. I won't say his last name, but I do remember. I mean, he was just clowning and dancing, and I said, "Larry, don't come to my room with that next class period." He said, "Yes, ma'am, I know." So they would do things that they know they would get away with, because a child is going to live up to your expectation, whether you have a high expectation of them or a low expectation. But the year before I became principal at the high school, there were a lot of handbook infractions. And so I made the decision as a principal that I had a focus. I had a big 3. I was going to focus on student IDs, tardies, and dress code. The dress code was off the chain. The violation. So I got flack for it because the first week of school was a 4-day week. I'll never forget it. It was a 4-day week, and I had about 50 dress code infractions that first week of school. And I said, I'm not going to deal with this. So that second week of school, I pulled my dean and I told him, these are my exact words. I said, I'm about to drop the hammer. I said, there's something in the student handbook called principal discretion. So that means that if there's a consequence listed or it's not listed, it's something the principal thinks that is appropriate consequence for that infraction, the handbook supports it under that. So instead of going through all the steps that were listed for dress code infractions, I went straight to Saturday detention. And that's what the students didn't want. So a dress code infraction was an automatic Saturday detention. And that second week, that first day, I think I had about 10 dress code infractions. The second day, I had 3. The third day, they tried me again and it went up. But after that, I didn't have any more. And I pulled the data. I'm always pulling data. The year before I became principal, there were 3,500 discipline referrals written. My first year as principal, there were 700. So I reduced the discipline infractions by 80% my first year because I pulled my team together and I was very consistent with what was happening, regardless if I got flack from the staff or the parents. I would hold my ground. I would take whatever they said to me, but this is what we were going to do. After all the talk, I understand that, yes, ma'am, but now this is still what's going to happen. And it helped. It helped a lot.
So when you have a kid that you have to discipline, do you have to? Is there situations where you have to deal with the parents, or is it easy adjustment because the parents know the kid?
No.
Got in trouble.
No, there's always a situation where you have to deal with the parent. And what's surprising is a parent will switch up on you. One day, You have a civil conversation with the parent about whatever happened with the student and the consequence you gave, and they're all on board and they understand. And I've had a parent come back the very next day with a different attitude. And I'm thinking like, what? For instance, speaking of dress code, had a student who, and this parent worked in the district. They didn't work at the high school, but they worked in the district. So I had a student who I gave a dress code infraction to. Parent came because of the level they were at, and they understood. Next day, the parent came back and they wanted to talk with me. And I'm like, sure. So she starts asking all these questions and started wanting to know why this and why that. And I'm like, but yesterday we were, you were, well, yeah, but they said, and I was like, they said. I mean, she worked herself up so much that she asked for her child's records to be transferred somewhere else. And I was like, whoa, like, where did that come from? But yeah, you always have to deal with the parents. There's been very few times when I've called a parent about a discipline consequence for a student and they say, Miss Pugh, I understand, I know. Very few times.
So I noticed like in this community, they're very behind the sports. Like they're very fans of basketball, whichever, sporting team. And they just won the championship last year, right?
Yep,
Football.
number 3.
Oh, okay. So I was wondering, like, what are they doing as far as in the community to support? Are they showing support for this year, like showing the guys coming up, things that's happening, and also the homecoming is coming up soon. Like when is the homecoming again?
Homecoming is October 17th.
October 17th.
Yes. So the community, yes, community does support athletics. But what I have noticed is the level of support from the community is directly tied to the coaching and their leadership. If there's not adults in the system that are doing what they're supposed to do, then the community support, it wanes, understandably. But we have community organizations that feed students. I know every Wednesday, football players are fed every Wednesday evening by an organization. And there have been civic organizations and other community organizations that have taken part in that. Speaking of the community, one thing I did in my first year as principal was I wanted to make sure that I leveled up the community partnerships. So I would call them Seminole partners. And I wrote, because let me say this, I don't mind begging for students and staff. I'll get out there and beg for them, no problem. And so I reached out to everyone. I mean, I thought about all the businesses that the school does business with or that I do business with personally. And I reached out to them for a donation in some form or for some help in some way. It could be guest speakers. They could do monetary donations. They could give materials, whatever it is. I felt like our students deserved it because I always wanted to make sure they have every opportunity possible. Every opportunity that's out there, I want our students to be a part of it. So community does support. What I do wish would happen is that they would pay more attention to the academics. One thing I've noticed is parent-teacher conferences. If a student's grades are fairly decent, or sometimes it doesn't even have to do with the grades, parents will come. There are very few parents at the high school level that will show up. And for the number that shows up, an even smaller percentage of those will go talk to the teachers. So they'll just come, sign, and get the report card and leave if they do come. I think it's important to know what's happening in the classroom or what's happening throughout the school day. A lot of times, students and parents equate making good grades with being a good student. And that's not always the case. Here recently, I had my niece living with me. She was a senior in high school, and I would get on to her for some things, and her main argument would be, well, I do what I'm supposed to do in school, I make good grades. But that doesn't necessarily equate to being a good student, because one day I decided to go by the high school for something else, and I see she's in the cafeteria at a time when I know she should be in class. So you went to first and second lunch today. You just skipped your class. So if I was a parent that didn't go check on things, just because she made good grades, I would think everything is okay. So I would encourage parents to be more involved. See what's happening. And don't go just for something negative. Don't go out there looking to see what the teachers are doing wrong. Go to see what your child is doing to make sure everything is okay.
Definitely. Yeah, I grew up around parents. What the parents were doing is they had to know the parents of the friend. You know, like if the kid come over, who are your parents? You know, they want to meet their parents. You know, parents were meeting parents, and so that kept a lot of stuff not happening also too. But it's definitely like you say that parents have to get involved. You know, more parents have to get involved.
Well, that accountability was there. When we were growing up, everyone was watching and everyone was holding us accountable. So if I was down the street acting up, my mom would know about it because somebody down the street is gonna tell her. You know, but nowadays that's not the case. And there seemed to be an offense taken if you do hold them accountable. So I think that we just need to hold our students accountable, hold our parents accountable, hold the teachers accountable. I try to make sure that students understood that, especially when you're enforcing policy or enforcing rules. I told them I'm not above the law either. I remember I talked about dress code. Used to get on to the young ladies if their dress was too short, their skirt is too short. And I had a way of measuring, and I taught them how to measure so that they wouldn't get in trouble when they got to the school. And I remember one day I walked out, I was in the cafeteria eating before first lunch came, and there was a student who came in a little early, and she looked at me, she said, "Miss Pugh, your dress look awfully short." She said, "Stand up, let me see if your dress is too short." Now, some adults might take offense to that. I said, "Yes, ma'am, Miss Triplet, I sure will." I said, "I checked myself before I left home." And I stood up and she said, "Okay, you're all right."
Yeah.
I didn't take offense to that because what I want them to do is police themselves. Because if your friend says something to you about your dress too short, there's not a discipline consequence for that.
Right.
But if that gets to Miss Pugh, then there's something gonna be done about it. So I wanted them to police themselves and police each other. And that was how we kept things down.
Well, it's been awesome, you know, having you here today. And it's, like I said, it's been a privilege. You know, it's our privilege and an honor. And I just wanted to shine that light on you and give you that opportunity to tell us some things that we didn't even know about the educational. But it's all a part of get your game tight. You know, you gotta get your game tight. In whatever field it is you're in, you have to get your game tight. And just want to say this is Galen Nickerson once again, the host of this show, Get Your Game Tight. And we're happy to have
Toshiba Pugh, Assistant Superintendent of Osceola School District.
And we thank you guys for joining us, and hopefully come and join us again sometime. See you on the next show.